Hey everybody, I said I'd do a video about occlusion bands, occlusion training, occlusion itself. Um, I think I have about 4 points or concepts of value to share here. I think at this point, most people in fitness type online circles would know what occlusion training is referring to. If you don't, you can simply Google it and learn about the concepts, the process, what it is. But I've been using this for, I'm guessing, close to 15 years on and off. Um, so, yeah, in the past, on a past channel, when I talked about it, it's like a lot of people were not familiar, but I'm guessing most people are now. Like I say, if you're not, you can just, do a little research on the topic. There's plenty of people talking about it, showing it, this and that. So my main four values I find in it so far that I wanted to share. The first one to consider is low impact muscle gains because obviously there's many implications for that. One, if you're injured and you're recovering. Two, if you're interested in at least doing some of your training with less risk of tearing or pulling something based on what else you got going in life. Another thing is, you can take occlusion bands with you traveling or here and there, and when you apply them, you won't need as much weight for the same exercises to get similar results. Now, what I just said, that's kind of some science has shown this. That doesn't mean I would say that, you should never just lift heavier without them. I think all modalities, ultimately, any decent modality of training has value. And it's, even though the world acts like it's this versus that, wisdom is really about how you as an individual are best to choose and pick and mix from these different things at different times and in different ways. So I think the low impact gains aspect of it is a pretty big thing to consider. Um, and that kind of leads into the other point, the second point, which is muscle tendon ligament repair. Um, as I mentioned in the previous video, I used occlusion on my injured leg when I had torn my ACL MCL. And that was a big part of my reconstruction process. A lot of when I got into the exercise part, which was not at first I just occluded the leg to let it swell full of blood and growth factors and repair factors, and then unoccluded it. And then it got to where, I would just do that a little bit, getting around, walking around stuff. Then I got to the point where the tendons were attached, they were really loose, and there was pain and swelling and this and that. But I started gently doing like terminal knee extensions that while that leg was occluded. And I referenced this in the connective tissue bulletproofing video that to this day, my left quad, this is the one that this occurred with, is stronger on unilateral things than my right quad. So obviously, terminal knee extensions, they're probably underrated. They can add some contractile strength to quads for sure, but it probably could have been various other exercises, and I still would have got a similar result as far as that leg being stronger now. Even though for a few years since then I trained both legs, the left one somehow is now a little bit stronger and better. Now, part of that's probably neural pathways from the amount of focus I was putting in it and the frequency of training. These were more low intensity occluded sessions, much more frequency. But the growth factors too, the mechanical growth factors and the stem cells. Stem cells having what they call anti-aging properties, youthing properties, I would call it, valuable in the whole body. And even though you're producing them, say, in your leg in this case, when you take the occlusion band off, they do travel around the body to other locations. And in the body's intelligence, no doubt some of those locations are prioritized based on where the need is highest, okay, for those stem cells. So those 2 points fit together pretty well. And then I thought the third thing, um, well, I guess that kind of is the third thing, talking about the growth factors in stem cells and things like this. And you can train. I've only done arms and legs. I've had people ask me, like, how do I occlude my hip or my shoulder? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's anybody out there. You could look around, see if somebody's got a way to, that they have some kind of, they have something to show that it actually works. They're able to occlude their shoulder or their hip. But what I would do is, knowing that the growth factors are going to move around once you release them anyway, if it was my hip I was working on, I would just occlude that leg or both and get a good pump and get a good oxygen debt, build up that hypoxia so you've got a lot of stem cells in there, and then release it. And that's going to flow right up to the hip. And a lot of those repair and growth factors, like I mentioned, are going to be somewhat prioritized in the injured area because the body has a ton of underestimated innate intelligence that way. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, another thing. Somebody might have, somebody might be saying this or showing this out there, but one thing I discovered with all the different training I've done on arms and legs with them is one really cool thing you can do or take advantage of because of the properties of it. Because you're able to get an excessive pump if you have the right tightness set on the occlusion band, you can get this crazy, I call it blood bags, which sounds a little gory. I only mean it in a joking, funny way. I walk around the house showing my kids and my wife my blood bag legs when they're pumped because all muscle definition is gone and they look like balloons, they're kind of so swollen. And what I'm getting at here is that at the end of an exercise session, if you use your last exercise for something very deeply stretched based, now go into this carefully, okay? Don't just drop to the bottom of something with an extreme overstretch you've never had before. But what it allows you to do is mechanically stretch on the muscle and especially the fascia really extra hard. And that's really awesome. I did some experiments with my quads, I remember, maybe a year ago, maybe more than that, I can't remember, but I would work up to a really heavy one rep max on something, like sort of something akin to like a like a hack squat, say, on a lever arm, let's say, with really high weight. And after that, I had my legs occluded the whole time. And even that kind of training, or even no training at all, the pump builds up in the muscle. So after that, I would walk over and do like some sissy squats, like one really deep, intense, stretching set of sissy squats, which is just body weight, right? But because of that extra pump, and because I had just contracted the muscles as hard as possible, lift something real heavy, that 1-2 combo was excellent. I got excellent results. I got some of the best quad gains I've ever had. And I've done all kinds of things with extreme weight and extreme volume, and I've had good quad gains other ways before. But I found this much more sustainable also because there's something really healthy. Now, okay, there are warnings out there, disclaimer, I'm not recommending occlusion. Guys, I am not here to tell you to imitate me, okay? And the more you hang out here, the more you're going to start to kind of see into what I'm getting at with that. But I'm offering these things to you. If you're interested, you can take any of these important things and look deeper into it, okay? But what like I say, I got some really good gains, and it was healthy because there wasn't that much volume involved, and there was all these growth and repair factors and really good gains in the muscle. Now, granted, in the past, of course, I've done segments of super high volume training, which adds nuclei and other factors. I'm never saying that my results are necessarily exactly repeatable by somebody, but there's obviously something to that. So if you haven't yet and you use occlusion bands, or you ever get into it, it's just something to consider. saving your last exercise on a session, whether this is some high volume session or low volume session or whatever, but having at least one set, one really good set of something at the end that is a very deep stretch based exercise, okay? Because it really takes advantage of that extra mechanical force from the highly inflated muscle and fascia that you're dealing with. I always stretch a pumped muscle at the end of training to loosen up the fascia bag around the muscle, because it does, in my experience or observation, make it a little easier for the muscle to then grow more because it's not so tight inside its own fascia. I'm not saying that your fascia won't learn to loosen up over time as your muscle grows. Of course, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if you help it, if you help the fascia loosen up at the end when you're pumped, the results come a little faster, okay? Because you're encouraging that process of the fascia loosening up, the membrane that's around every muscle that's very tight and strong. You could almost visualize your muscle being like the air inside of a tire and the fascia membrane being like the tire itself, okay? So if you want that tire to get bigger, which of course you don't with a real tire, but if you do with your muscle, when it's highly inflated, when it's got all that pressure inside, it's much easier to stretch that membrane bigger, right? So for me, those are a lot of the valuable takeaways. Anytime you can cause the hypoxia in a muscle, you get the stem cells, which are good for the rest of your body. You get growth factors, which affect you elsewhere, muscle gains and other things. Because growth factors in muscle are basically repair factors for tissue. So they do good in other areas of the body. I'm sure it's good for your organs and glands. So it's just a really neat thing when you understand it and you've got some practice with it and you can do it safely. You're not going too tight, you're not going too loose. For a long time, I actually used them too loose and I didn't realize it because I was getting a better pump than I would have. So obviously I was getting something out of it. I was already pleased with using occlusion. But I did some experiments and I found that actually tighter than I had been doing it, it was more painful. And there is a really fine line where you can get them too tight and you can feel like the muscle and nerves just start dying, like you can't even use it. That's too tight, obviously. But there is a fine line where it's painful. The muscle turns purple and blue. If you have like a lighter skin toning, you can see that. But either way, even if you don't, you're getting hypoxia, and you're creating all these growth factors and all these stem cells, which is just so cool, right? Plus, you're getting a super pump, and then you pop it loose, and of course, the localized area probably gets the lion's share of the extra gains from it. But it definitely affects you elsewhere. I'm not the only one who knows this. This way, you're using your own body to create organic, real, living growth factors instead of, going into debt or spending tons of money to inject synthetic ones. And I'm not judging anybody or talking down to anybody, not at all. All experience is valid. But, I just think I wanted to share that. For whom it may concern, because I've been very pleased with a lot of things with the occlusion bands. I'll give you another example. Actually several times when I was working hard on one-armed pull-ups and even weighted one-arm pull-ups, I would only train it once a week, but one of the tendons in my elbow would get really, really sore to the point where it was finally limiting me because the tendon didn't have time to recover from that kind of force. Other times this didn't happen, but obviously at times when my body was a little more prone to inflammation, that tendon would get inflamed. It's not like it was going to snap or anything, but it's just annoyingly inflamed. And I like to eliminate distractions like that because when I'm trying to go for a max lift on something, any distraction I can take out of it, like unnecessary pain, I find that I'm able to concentrate the mind-muscle connection better and actually take the lift to a higher number. Now, granted, there's pain involved in lifting anyway. I'm saying unnecessary factors, right? If you can take a soreness or an inflammation or around here I get a bunch of bug bites, if wasps are stinging me, I'm probably not going to have my best lift. You know what I'm saying? So any distraction, obviously mental chatter, it's a plague the world's stuck in. Any distraction you can eliminate while you're doing something, it gets better. So I used the occlusion bands for like active recovery on the days when I was not doing the heavy one arm pull up, chin up practice. And, I would just like put them on, sometimes just leave them on and just do normal chores and let my arms get kind of engorged with blood. Or maybe I'd do a couple really light sets, pick up a 10-pound dumbbell, do 2 or 3 high rep sets just to get some blood pumping, things of that nature. And I found that it really did help. It helped the tendon and ligament be able to get more blood flow, get more growth factors, get more repair factors, and start catching up to the training I was doing on it at the time. So these are all things that can have a lot of utility. Obviously, a lot of athletes and other people can apply this a lot of really effective ways. I don't think anything I'm saying here, like I think there's probably science for people looking for that on anything I'm saying here, but I'm just saying it out of a lot of experience because experience is always the best teacher. And these are real life observations that have not just been observed but lived. So there you go, guys. Hopefully that's helpful to whom it may concern. Much love. Over and out for now.